In California, heartbreak and outrage after a father was taken into custody following the tragic death of his young son. Investigators say his car was swept away by powerful floodwaters during a relentless storm, leaving rescuers searching desperately through the raging current. The child's body was later found downstream, a devastating discovery that has shaken the community. Now, the father faces charges of negligence and child endangerment as prosecutors claim he ignored repeated flood warnings. Is this justice? Tonight, a closer look. Meanwhile, Melodee Buzzard, a bright 9-year-old from Santa Barbara County, California, vanished under mysterious circumstances, sparking a nationwide search. Authorities say her mom, Ashley, took her on a drive from California to Nebraska, but Melodee did not return home. Investigators say Ashley has been largely uncooperative, offering few explanations as police struggle to piece together the girl's final movements. Tonight, the latest in this ongoing investigation. But first, Terence Crosbie, a firefighter from Dublin, came to Boston to be part of the St. Patrick's Day parade. Then he was arrested for rape. He went to trial and the first jury was hung. Then came his retrial on Court TV. A he said, she said, the accuser and the defendant testifying. She said she had consensual sex with Crosbie's hotel roommate and fell asleep, then woke up while Crosbie was raping her. The DNA of 2 men was found in her private area, but neither sample was large enough to connect to anyone. He then got on the witness stand and said he didn't rape her and did not engage in any sexual contact with her at all. After 15 hours, the jury has now spoken, and we have the shocking verdict tonight. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Yes, it is a verdict night, but it's October, so the tie is pink, not red. Let's talk about this case. Irish firefighter comes to the United States for St. Paddy's Day, ends up charged with rape. Hung jury first trial. This is the retrial. And the big issue throughout all of this is the DNA. The DNA evidence, which was inconclusive. Now, there's 2 parts to this DNA evidence. Number one, they could not connect it to the defendant. But in the same breath, they could not exclude the defendant. It was just inconclusive because it was too small of a sample. But there was DNA from 2 male donors in the private area of the accuser. So that's the evidence. It's from 2 men. It's in her private area. The first jury deadlocked. They could not agree. They deliberated for 22 hours, which is a long time for a trial that was only 4 days. So the first jury, they tried and tried and tried, but they just saw it differently. And my guess is people may have been hung up on the DNA being inconclusive and, you know, some of the other issues involved in the case, obviously with the accuser not being able to positively identify the defendant, but she did identify the voice, an Irish accent, which is 1,000% consistent with the defendant. So when we talked about, and we've been talking about this case because the jury's been out for several days. And on Wednesday, I'm in studio with the live think tank, and they're all saying there's reasonable doubt here. For those of you who watched the show, they were ganging up on me. They were ganging up on me. They were saying, no, come on. There's reasonable doubt here. The DNA, the DNA doesn't say he's innocent. They just couldn't figure it out. And I couldn't get through to the think tank on Wednesday. And I looked at this, and I'm pretty good at math. I did well on the SATs on math. I thought this was a simple math equation. Remember what investigators found when they did the rape kit. Again, the DNA from 2 male donors in her private area. 2, okay? Let's go to the scene that night, a hotel room, okay? There are 3 people inside that hotel room. That was proven. by the access with the cards, by the video in the hallway. There were 3 people in the room that night. 2 of those individuals were male. The defendant and Liam O'Brien, the man she had consensual sex with. 3 people in the hotel room. 1 is a woman, the accuser. Take away 3 people in there, take away her, you're left with 2 people. The DNA from 2 people equals guilty. Who else could have deposited that DNA? There was no evidence of anyone else. Anyone else. 3 people in the room, minus the 1 woman, leaves 2 men. Liam O'Brien, who she consensually engaged in relations with, and the defendant. Simple. Let's take a listen to what the jury had to say today.
What say you, Mr. Foreperson, as to indictment number 2024-00244, offense 001, rape? Is the defendant not guilty or guilty?
Guilty.
Members of the jury, hearken to your verdicts as the court has recorded it. You, upon your oath, do say that the defendant, Terence Crosbie, on indictment number 2024-00244, offense 001, is guilty. So say you, Mr. Foreperson.
Yes.
So say all members of the jury.
Yes.
May the verdict slips be filed and recorded.
Yes, the verdict is recorded. Jurors, you may have a seat.
Guilty. He testified he told this story. She testified she told her story. But his story doesn't add up. Like, who else was in the room? No one else is in the room. He did not allege that they engaged in consensual relations. He said no contact whatsoever. So you cannot, and they did not, make an argument that, oh yeah, it was there because it was consensual. Wasn't part of this trial, was not part of any allegation of any fact here. It's the evidence. And the way she responded to what happened to her in that hotel room, immediately calling out, crying out about what happened. Went to the emergency room, got the rape kit. All right. Court TV field producer Tiffany Smith was inside the courtroom when this verdict came down and is joining us, I believe, from the airport by phone tonight. Tiffany, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Vinnie. How are you?
Okay. All right. I was watching and listening to this verdict, Tiffany, and I thought I heard in the background some sobbing. Can you describe the moment, what you saw, what you heard as the jury delivered this extremely dramatic, powerful verdict today?
Absolutely. So Terence Crosbie seemed to show no emotion from what we could see from our vantage point. When the verdict was read, there were 4 guards surrounding him, and the family members, when they heard that guilty verdict, his father made an audible gasp. He was the only one that made a gasp in the courtroom. The rest of the family members were pretty quiet. They were sobbing. They were upset of the outcome of the verdict. Crosbie's wife, after the jury was let out of the courtroom, she folded over and began audibly sobbing. She was crying. She had her face in her hands. She could not control her emotions. I heard her say he didn't have sex with that woman. Crosbie's relative, who we believe is his father, he basically said, I can't believe this happened with a system that's supposed to be so good. Obviously distraught. He had a lot of family members that came across from Ireland to be here for the trial, and it's not the outcome that they expected. One thing to know, when Crosbie walked out of the courtroom, he didn't turn to his family members. He walked out. They ushered him out in his handcuffs. But normally, when Crosbie walked out of the courtroom, he would turn to his family members, especially his wife, and mouth the word, "I love you." He did not do that after the verdict.
Did you see or notice anything from the jurors?
I did. They didn't, when they walked in the courtroom, they did not look at Crosbie. So that kind of gave us a telltale sign that this may not be going the right direction. When they left the courtroom, there were two of the male jurors that looked like they were flush. And one of them, I believe, he wiped his eye. I'm not sure if he was, emotional because of the wife's reaction. But you could tell that, the jury struggled with their decision before announcing that they had a verdict.
Absolutely. But they worked. They did 15 hours of deliberations to reach this verdict. It wasn't willy-nilly. They didn't just jump in there and vote. They worked at it, and Massachusetts juries are known for doing that. Anything else of note here as we talk about this verdict today and what lies ahead for this defendant at this point? Because he's going to be sentenced, and is that coming up quickly?
Yes. His sentence is actually next week. It's on October 30th. As of now, we do expect that at least one of his family members will speak on his behalf. The Commonwealth did not want to share any information what they're going to be asking for a sentencing. So we have to wait until there's a court filing to find out exactly what they're looking for as far as prison time.
All right. Tiffany, I know you've got to catch that plane. We appreciate you jumping in here and giving us some of the information and some of the insight into what happened in this extremely dramatic verdict. Thanks so much, Tiffany Smith, joining us, Court TV field producer. All right, let's get some reaction. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney Josh Colesrud, along with former law enforcement officer and host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King, and entertainment host Holland Reed. Great to have everyone here tonight. It's a verdict night. Some people didn't think this jury would reach a verdict. The first jury out 22 hours. They could not, agree. Wasn't the longest trial. It was, several days, 4 days or so. But 15 hours, Friday verdict. Was justice served today up in Boston? Josh Colesrud, get us started.
Well, it's less surprising that the second trial was a guilty verdict. Statistics show that prosecutors are much more likely to get a guilty verdict the second time because they're prepared for what the defense is going to argue. Now, today's verdict is for the victim. She's had to live through testifying in not one, but two separate trials about the most horrible and intimate moment of her life. It was like voyeurism on display for everybody to see. And so I'm really happy for the victim in this case, finally, that she gets justice and finally, hopefully, some closure.
Go ahead, Claudia.
I think, today was a victory for victims everywhere because it's so difficult for a victim of sexual assault to come forward in the first place. And knowing that there wasn't DNA and she just had to tell her story and rely on her own word and his inconsistencies. I'm so proud of this jury. I think they took a decent amount of time to really work through everything. I do believe they got it right. And I just quickly want to say to people out there who are saying, if this happened to me, I would do this or I would do that, stop. You don't know what you would do when you are faced with this type of situation.
Can I just chime in here really quick? Absolutely. completely agree with you. The thing I want to also address is looking at him, he looks like someone that wanted to believe full-heartedly that he was innocent. That's talking about culture, the culture of threesomes, the culture of going back to a hotel room. Maybe he didn't get what he wanted. Maybe he didn't feel like he was doing anything wrong because she was intoxicated. Everyone was kind of having a good time. I don't know what scenario you go into a room, 2 men and 1 woman, and they're having relations in one situation and another where someone might not feel slighted. He looks like he wanted to believe he was innocent. And as a mother of a 25-year-old son, I always want to believe that my son is innocent, so I can understand that outcry in the courtroom. But at the end of the day, you guys are all absolutely right. You did what you did and you got what you got. And that Irish exit did not pan out for you this time. So had to put that in there.
Oh, yeah. He tried to leave the country. Obviously, he wasn't under arrest at the time, so he was trying to skedaddle. You know what I think also made it difficult for this jury was there's 3 people in the room. The third person, the jury didn't hear from. Like, I believe every trial needs to be a search for the truth. I want the jury to have more information, not less. But the fact that Liam O'Brien did not testify, to me, is extremely problematic just in the search for the truth. Now, you have the DNA evidence, but here's someone who could have refuted what the defendant said or corroborated what the defendant said, could have said something about this, and it didn't happen. I'm wondering, Josh, do you think that, I don't know, would prosecutors have brought him in? Would the defense have? I don't know what he would have said, but it seems that was the missing piece for the jury, which may have made it a little more difficult since you have a witness who's in the room while the rape is taking place and he's not part of the trial.
Exactly. And, you know, there's certainly going to be a backstory about whether or not the prosecutors or the defense issued an international warrant. You know, unfortunately, those warrants, and I've issued these before as a prosecutor, are not enforceable. But we do kind of know what he would have testified to. He stated during an interview with police officers that he was asleep and he didn't hear anything. But so I think that would maybe help his friend, his colleague that was with him. But at the end of the day, you know, the jurors made the right decision in this case. And also, you know, I think that you made a good point, Vinnie, with the DNA in the case. You know, the 2 male DNA inside of her body just couldn't be refuted away. And the fact that the defendant changed his flight to leave early shows consciousness of guilt, along with the inconsistent statements. I think the jury made the right move. Yeah,
he also allegedly, according to police, told them in an interview, if you run into some of my DNA, when my roommate went down for breakfast, I was pleasuring myself in bed. Okay. Let's take a listen to the prosecutor.
It was the same day that the jury hung last time that we said we will do this again. It was not hard at all to do the right thing.
What message do you hope victims in the future take away from this kind of case?
I hope they take away that they can come forward, they will be supported by this office, and that they'll be believed.
What do you think the turning point for this case opposed to the initial one?
It's so hard to say. I wish I had a definitive answer. I'd have to be a mind reader, I think, to know what it was. I think, honestly, it was the strength of the survivor's testimony. I think it was her coming in and asserting what the truth was, and the jury listening and hearing it. And I think a lot of it, too, I credit the jury with being able to separate and discount the frankly misogynistic attitudes that can lead to jury nullification in these cases, and that can lead jurors to excuse men for the harm that they inflict on women for reasons that have no basis in the law.
That's the prosecutor. She would have tried it again if it was hung again. You know, I look at this case and I think about, Claudia, the expected, like if you gave me this fact scenario, right? I would have guessed that the defense would have been it was consensual, right? Yeah, we're in the hotel, we're all drunk, and hey, she came into the room. And I think that would have been much more difficult for a jury to sort of parse out to get to that level of beyond a reasonable doubt. But he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that because he'd have to admit to his wife that when he went off to Boston for St. Patty's Day, he was like on a mission looking for someone to hook up with.
Immediately when they went out, he was looking for someone. And I think you're absolutely right. That is why he could not go with that story, which, as you said, would have been a much better defense. And I think, in my opinion, the reason that Liam did not come and testify, he knows who Terence Crosbie is. He knows what kind of person he is. And maybe he was asleep when this happened, but I think he did not want to come and testify against his brother in the fire department. And so he opted to just not come at all and leave it to Terence to figure it out.
So I'm just going to piggyback on that. That protection of that brotherhood in fire departments, police departments is so intact. It is so strong that that's why we have so much corruption on top of wonderful protection. It's a double-edged sword here. And this is one of those situations, as Claudia was saying, he was probably protecting his brother, but also not wanting to start a fire within the fire department.
Yeah, and also doesn't want to come back to the United States and potentially commit perjury and then get arrested as he steps off the witness stand, which is possible. Like, you could potentially do that depending upon what he had to say. But the bottom line is, I think what happened here is a guy who did something he shouldn't have done, may have had a way out of it. It would have cost him his marriage, but he'll be married, but he'll be behind bars for up to, about 20 years. We'll see. The sentencing is coming up. Good news, our think tank staying with us. When we come back, we've got the case of that 9-year-old girl from Santa Barbara County, Melodee Buzzard, still missing tonight. We've got some new images to show you, some new information that may help us get to the truth of what happened to this 9-year-old. Plus, coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates shocking cases involving cold-blooded killers. And tonight we speak with people who sat across from these murderers, interviewing them, probing their minds, looking for insight and information. What did these interviews with killers reveal? Tonight, we investigate.
I've committed so many horrific acts over and over and over.
Do you think you deserve to die for murdering those innocent people?
You tell me. I wish more than anything, David, that I would have done something other than the things I've done in my life.
Are you really a changed man, or is this some kind of stunt?
Interview with a Killer, 2-hour season premiere, Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
Hey, my friend, you came back. Yeah, we're here.
You're looking at the home of Ashley Buzzard. She has a 9-year-old girl named Melodee. No one has seen Melodee. This is a worker from Child Protective Services attempting to serve some papers on Ashley, the mother, because nobody knows where Melodee is. Ashley's not opening up the door. They're unsuccessful. They came several different times. Finally, they came, and finally, there was some level of success here. Again, knocking on the door and finally getting some level of response and serving some papers on Ashley Buzzard. This is significant because there's a 9-year-old girl that is missing. No one knows where she is, but mom has not been cooperating. She's been avoiding everyone. There's been a search warrant executed at her home, and now finally being served with some paperwork. Hopefully it is an order to produce your daughter or face legal consequences. You recall in the case of Lori Daybell, that's what they did. They served her down in Hawaii to produce Tylee and JJ. She couldn't, and then she was finally arrested. And that started the whole process and continued the investigation. There you see, it looks like she closed the door on them. We've got some more information to show you. Take a look at the screen. This is a new image that was released by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. Detectives have narrowed the critical timeline to between October 7th and October 10th of 2025. Investigators have confirmed that Ashley was seen returning to her Lompoc residence on October 10th, driving the same rental vehicle she departed with on October 7th. But Melodee was not in the car. Investigators understand that this 3-day road trip went from Lompoc to the Nebraska area, with the return trip including the state of Kansas. Detectives are now focused on determining where Melodee was during those 3 days and where she may be now. As part of this update, detectives are sharing these images you're looking at, surveillance images of Melodee captured at a local car rental business. This is on October 7th. In the photo, Melodee is wearing a hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled up and what appears to be a wig on her 9-year-old daughter, a wig that is darker and straighter than her natural hair. She has that very distinctive curly hair. And here, Mom apparently has her wearing a wig of straight black hair. Investigators believe the wig may have been used to alter her appearance. Detectives also note that Ashley is known to wear wigs. Where is Melodee? How can they get to the bottom of that? Think Tank still with us. Josh Colesrud, Claudia King, Holland Reed. So, Claudia, what are your thoughts here? It seems like this is the step, right? You got to serve Mom with some papers, give her some sort of legal obligation, and hopefully she either produces Melodee, or if she doesn't, law enforcement can do something about it.
Well, it seems like she has no interest in producing Melodee, and I'm fearful that she is unable to produce Melodee. I think this brings on a bigger question, Vinnie, in that homeschooling is giving some of these parents an opportunity and an outlet to abuse their children or dispose of them in some way, and there's no oversight. There's no going to school where teachers can put their eyes on children every day, where children can report something going on at home. And I think that's a bigger problem that we're seeing now and that needs to be investigated. Something needs to be done with these poor kids that are being homeschooled.
Holland Reed, I'm holding on to the hope. I believe there's a chance, because of how bizarre Ashley is, that Melodee could be alive. Like, she could have been dropped somewhere in the middle of the country and somehow, some way, perhaps still be alive tonight. What are your thoughts about this mom, her state of mental illness, and refusing to cooperate here?
Vinnie, the mental illness part has been established. She had her first child taken away by the father. She has not had that child. I think her own mother said, I haven't spoken to my daughter in 2 years. So the mental illness has been established. But the fact that she drove that far and she cannot produce the child, as Claudia said, that's the part that is the scariest part, and has also not been seen in public under the guidance or the protection of, like you said, a school system of what sorts. But hopefully she's still alive. I have this fear that she has been sold. The mental health issue, the possible drug issue that the rumor mill is going on social media. Listen, she's betrayed her name at this point, because the buzzards are circling around her. We want answers. Everyone wants answers, and we're not getting them. It reminds me of the Ruby Frank documentary, where the kid had to escape for everyone to get answers, and that was all based off of homeschooling. She was in control. So now I hope that it ends up where the kids she's rescued, just like her kids were, but it's looking very bleak that she's going to come back in I'd say, a healthy fashion.
Josh, what are your thoughts here?
You know, I have to agree with Holland. Law enforcement really is circling for answers here. But, if I am the prosecutor really looking at this case, I want to start what's called a grand jury investigation. The reason I want to do a grand jury investigation as opposed to your regular detective investigation is because you can make sure that witnesses don't tell anybody anything because it's a secret process. You can also get documents and other things that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to get without subpoenas. So I think that this needs to be elevated to, because of the 2-year-old that's involved here, into an elevated investigation, so to speak.
Yeah, she's so distinctive, but now learning that mom may have disguised her, to me, makes it much more difficult for detection, because the whole thing, we were looking at this little girl, Claudia, with this beautiful wild hair, and it's like, wherever she is, you're going to notice her. So if anyone saw her in Nebraska or Kansas or anywhere in between, they would remember. But if this is how she's going around, you may not have even noticed her.
And it sounds like that was mom's plan, I think, because you're exactly right, Vinny. She's very distinctive looking. She's such a cute little girl, and she has that trademark curly hair. But now she's walking around with this one wig. Well, what other disguises might exist? I'm on Team Holland here. I think she might have been sold, given to somebody. I hope that she is still alive. I think she is alive, but it's going to be really difficult to find her when they don't even know what they're looking for.
Yeah, this one is breaking my heart, Holland. It's breaking my heart. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, or what state or what city. We're talking, I mean, thousands of miles here to go over. Who's really paying attention to this young girl? This is not from one city or county to another. This was California, if I'm not mistaken, all the way to potentially Nebraska. So this is a huge scope of whether the mother dumped her off, dropped her off, sold her off, and now she could be being transported to anywhere. That's my biggest fear more than anything.
Yeah, and Josh, the FBI is on the case, so hopefully they'll put as much effort into this as they do into poker games.
Oh, thank God. And good call with the poker games. The FBI is the preeminent law enforcement agency. I can tell you stories about how impressed I am with their ability to solve cases like this. That does give me reassurance that we're going to get some answers. They have unlimited resources. They have the best agents. And I think that hopefully in the coming days, we're going to have some more answers coming up.
All right, Think Tank sticking around. When we come back, another family tragedy. A father is driving through some treacherous floodwaters in California. He survives. His 2-year-old son does not. Now he's been charged criminally. Details when we return. What a tragedy. This car caught in a flash flood out in Barstow, California. Inside was a dad and his 2-year-old son. They got separated. Dad survived, but the 2-year-old son did not. And now it has turned into a criminal case. Take a look at this from the Barstow Police Department. On Thursday, September 18th, approximately 7:14, the Barstow Police Department and Fire District were dispatched to the area of West Main Street regarding reports of a vehicle that had been swept away by floodwaters. Responding units determined that the vehicle had been carried into a wash north of West Main Street. As the vehicle was overtaken by the floodwaters, the driver, 26-year-old Brandon Padilla Aguilera, and his 2-year-old son, Xavier Padilla Aguilera, exited the vehicle but were ultimately separated from each other. Numerous emergency responders assisted in conducting an extensive search. Unfortunately, Xavier was located deceased on the 19th. Now, due to the severity of the incident, the Barstow Police Detective Division started investigating. Over the course of a month-long investigation, they spoke with witnesses and gathered evidence. Based on the evidence, detectives secured an arrest warrant for him. Then on October 17th at 12:30, detectives arrested Brandon Padilla Aguilera at his residence without incident. He was booked into the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department on charges of murder. Well, then the DA's office got the case, and they downgraded things to vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence, child abuse, endangerment under circumstances or conditions likely to cause a great bodily injury or death. This count includes a special allegation of willful harm and injury resulting in death. Okay, I'm looking at this situation myself, and I'm wondering, there's got to be more to this. If it's just a guy with an error in judgment in driving somewhere he shouldn't have, and an error in judgment in thinking he could take his son out of the car and get out of this situation, that's a tragedy. That's an error in judgment. That's not a crime. But is there more? I would think there'd have to be more, whether it's someone specifically telling him not to do it or him purposely throwing his son into the floodwaters to save himself. I don't know. Let's bring back in the think tank. Josh Colesrud, Claudia King, Holland Reed. Holland, does this sound like a crime to you, or do you need to hear more?
Vinnie, I'm going with you on this. I need to hear more because my first heartstring goes to, it was an accident. It was a tragedy. If you're all parents, I'm a parent. I've made mistakes one time where I thought I was going to be arrested because my son ran off and they considered it neglect. And that was back when he was 2 and 3 years old, very rambunctious. But there was no crime committed, so to speak, and nothing happened to my child. But I have such a sympathy and empathy for that because I don't feel like this is the whole story. It feels like something else had to have happened for that level of a charge to come his way. As you said, he left him there. He left him in the car while he tried to do something else. It doesn't really quite make sense, especially looking at the pictures, which seems a little disturbing. Why would anybody drive or even attempt to drive in that level of water with hopefully your child in the back seat where they're supposed to be? It does not make any sense to me.
Who's up?
Yeah, I have to piggyback on that. I like what Holland had to say, and I would like to add that this type of case reminds me of the drownings that we often see here in Arizona, where a father would leave a gate open, and then their 2-year-old son would crawl in the pool, and 5 minutes later the son is dead, and the father is then charged with manslaughter. This is very similar to that type of case, and law enforcement has to be really careful with prosecuting tragedy because ultimately you want the charges to deter conduct. And if the majority of people in that situation may not know what they could have done or if it would have been reasonable to go through that water, then it's not a crime. And flooding in that area was uncommon. So this was what we call as lawyers an act of God. And, would everybody react in it differently? Playing Monday morning quarterback, yeah, it's easy to say I would never do that. But in the moment, maybe it looked like he could cross it. I mean, who knows?
I just think there's more going on, Vinnie, because surely this police department and this DA would not initially charge murder and then change it to manslaughter just because he drove into water he shouldn't have. I'm wondering, was there a sign saying don't go through and he went through? Was he intoxicated? Like, what did they discover in all these interviews and evidence collection that led them to this decision?
Yeah, there has to be more to the story, because if there isn't, for a father to lose his little boy and know that he was responsible, to me, that is punishment. That is a life sentence right there. And the question is, what would the more be? And the thing, Holland, here is that they did do a months-long investigation. They did speak with witnesses. So at this point, I guess we'll have to find out when they head to the courtroom and we start to hear more of the facts come out. I don't want to prejudge it one way or the other, but I'm always tentative when we criminalize accidents. When we criminalize accidents, to me, it takes a little bit more. We can't have this melding of civil liability with criminal liability, and even in the context of a parent and a child. I'm just hoping that this was a father who wanted to do the best that he could for his son.
I'm going to completely agree with you. It's such a catch-22 when he could have just been, as everyone has said, trying to get his son through this flood and couldn't get the door open or what have you. Or he could have been intoxicated and couldn't get the door open. Or he could have a history of child abuse that we don't know about yet that hasn't come to light. Or there's or. It just feels like it's a tragedy all the way around. This young child has lost his life. This father, who hopefully did not have ill intent, will have his day in court. But nonetheless, it is a catch-22 when we're looking at accidents and criminalizing them, and also punishing them more than people actually who have intent
get punished.
Get the punishment.
We've seen that. Josh Colesrud, Claudia King, Holland Reed, thank you so much. We appreciate it. When we return, I'll reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates shocking cases involving cold-blooded killers. And tonight we speak with people who sat across from these murderers, interviewing them, probing their minds, looking for insight and information. What did these interviews with killers reveal? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
An Amber Alert triggered by a deadly shooting and 2 girls taken by their father.
But did Dustin Durin shoot the mother of his children in self-defense?
The Amber Alert murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. Who do we have speaking out? This is the daughter of Sheriff Mickey Steins out of Eastern Kentucky, the sheriff who shot and killed the judge on video in his chambers. This is the video. His daughter was the phone call that he was making from his phone and then the judge's phone just before he shot and killed the judge. I don't know if he made contact with her or not, but there were a lot of rumors about the daughter, and she had nothing to do with this, but was kind of stuck in the middle. Well, now she's speaking out on her TikTok account. It's Lila Steins on her TikTok account. Let's take a listen to what she has to say.
Do you all not have anything better to do than to sit and gossip? You are taking my pain and making it your pleasure. You're taking our stories and turning them into big entertainment pieces, jokes, and for that matter, you're making it your income. Since when did that become okay? So my advice to the people doing that, get a job. I had good intentions with that video. A lot of you were asking, what stories? What do you mean by gossip? And what I mean by that is the stories that were made up about me and the other party. I am aware of how serious this is and how much of a big deal it is. I was not talking about news or social media. I was simply talking about the people who sit at home behind a keyboard all day and say terrible things about my name.
Yeah, she's really been put in a difficult position, Lila Steins, so our thoughts are with her. Her father, though, on video, we're tracking his case, and we'll cover that trial when it happens. Right now, we have another child who needs your help tonight. This is 15-year-old Judy Ann John, missing from Puyallup, Washington, since October 14th. If you see Judy Ann, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference, 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Puyallup, Washington Police Department, and that number's on your screen. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.